Jennifer's Body, the 2009 horror comedy. In this video we will be diving straight into its deeper themes and symbolism. Let us begin. Jennifer's Body takes three classic narratives and stacks them together in a single story. One is modern, one is medieval, and one is ancient. Let's go through them. First of all, the modern. On the surface, this is an American high school coming-of-age movie, a mythology which arose through the 20th century. Stories about teenagers with raging hormones, trying to make sense of life in the bizarre and fleeting environment of school. In these movies, the same archetypes appear again and again. The mean girl, the nerd, the jock, the goth. Most of us don't neatly fit into those categories, but they're recognisable nonetheless. School is a place where people are trying to figure out where they belong, and it's the perfect setting for a horror film.
Hell is a teenage girl.
We will now be entering spoiler territory. The supernatural horror element of Jennifer's Body is introduced through another classic narrative, a deal with the devil. We see it in countless stories from around the world and down through history, especially throughout the medieval period. The church had legitimate concerns about people forming alliances with Satan, including some of its own clergy. For instance, Theophilus of Adana in the 6th century, a man who allegedly made a contract with the devil in his own blood, renouncing Christ, and in return the devil helped him attain the position of bishop. This legend may well have provided inspiration for what is perhaps the most famous deal with the devil story, the German legend of Faust from the 16th century.
And as I lost control, I swore I'd sell my soul for one. That's it.
In any case, it's a timeless tale. Someone forms an alliance with a dark force, thinking it will help them achieve their goal, but ultimately it consumes them.
I was in the library the other night, in the restricted section, and I read something rather odd about a bit of rare magic.
And Jennifer's Body brings this narrative into the context of a fictional 21st century American town called Devil's Kettle.
Do you want to work at Moosehoof Coffee forever? I don't, okay? Do you want to be a big loser, or do you want to be rich and awesome like that guy from Maroon 5? Maroon 5.
These are the members of a band called Low Shoulder. They want fame and fortune, but it's hard to come by.
Do you know how hard it is to make it as an indie band these days? There's so many of us, and we're all so cute, and it's like if you don't get on Letterman or some retarded soundtrack, you're screwed, okay?
So, they turn to the devil for help.
Satan is our only hope. We're in league with the beast now, and we have to make a really big impression on him.
Turns out they're willing to do basically anything to achieve their dream. This includes starting a fire at a gig to create a distraction, abducting a young woman who they believe to be a virgin, and butchering her as a sacrifice to Satan. It's deeply disturbing. The young woman they choose is called Jennifer Check. They show a complete disregard for her value and dignity. They treat her as an object, an instrument by which they may obtain something they want. Here's Diablo Cody and Megan Fox reflecting in 2019.
So one thing that people have asked me about recently is Me Too, and the way that this, like perhaps this film is finding more of a sympathetic audience now because it is dealing with themes of like consent, assault, like male abuse of power.
I realized that in filming that scene where they sacrifice me, that for me, that was really reflective of, I felt like my relationship with the movie studios at that point. Because I felt like that's what they were willing to do, to literally bleed me dry. They didn't care about my health, my well-being, mentally, emotionally, physically at all. And they were willing to sacrifice me physically as long as they got what they wanted out of it. And it didn't matter how many times I spoke up and said, I'm hurting, this isn't right, I need someone to protect me, this is going on, someone needs to listen. It didn't matter at all. And so in that moment, they kind of were a representation of what I was dealing with that way.
The Low Shoulder band members sacrifice Jennifer on the altar of fame and fortune. But there's a complication. Jennifer isn't a virgin. and therefore in attempting the ritual on her, they unwittingly unleash a demonic presence. Jennifer rises from what would have been her grave to a new life of seducing boys in order to feast on their blood.
Jennifer's evil.
I know.
No, I mean, she's actually evil. Not high school evil.
Now, the intent of the band members was to kill her, not unleash a demon. But even after performing the ritual incorrectly, their wish appears to be granted. Fame and fortune come their way. False reports of them heroically rescuing people from the fire start to emerge.
And that was Low Shoulder, the local band who became unlikely heroes of the tragedy in Devil's Kettle last night. Eyewitnesses say the boys helped numerous people escape the inferno, risking their own lives in the process. That's rock and roll with a conscience, ladies and gentlemen. And guess what? We are honored to have Low Shoulder in the studio right now. Now, how you guys holding up?
We're maintaining, man. It's not easy, but, you know, the real heroes are the people of Devil's Lake. I just hope we can convey 1/10 of their courage and spirit in our upcoming album.
This is a really interesting aspect of the film, the interplay between the supernatural and this small-town culture. Low Shoulder's rise to fame is undoubtedly being influenced by the dark satanic forces with which they have formed an alliance. But the people of Devil's Kettle and beyond are unwittingly contributing to it, feeding the lie. Because in the wake of all the tragedy, they need heroes to look up to. They need hope. And it's all too easy to search for hope in all the wrong places.
Low Shoulder are American heroes? No, they're not. I was there, Chastity. They didn't help anybody escape the fire. They used us.
You take that back, Needy Les, Nikki.
Girls.
We need them now more than ever.
Jennifer's best friend, Needy, can see through the mask. She knows that Low Shoulder are really motivated by greed. But it's a while before she discovers the full extent of their evil.
And those guys from Low Shoulder? Totally evil. They're basically like agents of Satan with really awesome haircuts.
For much of the film, the Low Shoulder band members seem to get away with it. But eventually, as with most deal with the devil's stories, the dark forces they thought they could control come back to bite them. Judgment is visited upon them through Needy, who receives a residue of demonic power upon being bitten by Jennifer.
Most occult scholars don't know this, but if you're bitten by a demon and you live, you just might absorb some of the demon's abilities.
Even if Jennifer had been a virgin, if the ritual had been performed correctly, whatever that means, I think things still would have gone badly for the band. They're thinking of Satan as a genie who grants human wishes for a cost, but even that is a deception. Deals with the devil always go sour because the devil does not facilitate human flourishing. It's implied that Jennifer's demonic form is a succubus, a supernatural entity described in folklore from the Middle Ages. We probably see an early example in the figure of Lilith, who appears in Mesopotamian and Jewish mythologies. For instance, the alphabet of Ben Sira, written sometime between the years 700 and 1000. This text asserts that before God made Eve using a rib from Adam's side, he made a different woman from the dust of the earth and called her Lilith, a female partner who turned out to be unsuitable for Adam. And so she descended into darkness, becoming a feared demonic figure. Now, there's a huge amount of debate about this text. It was written long after the biblical canon, and it's often regarded as a piece of satire. Nonetheless, Lilith has since been reinterpreted as a symbol for female independence, breaking free from the shackles imposed by men. In a 2011 paper, Lauren Kinrick argues that Lilith is a ready scapegoat, a demonic, powerful, sexual woman onto whom blame for sexual impropriety can easily be placed. In this way, conceptions of Lilith actually create the space for deviance from the sexual norm, providing Jewish men with not only an explanation for their impure thoughts or actions, but even a justification. To put it bluntly, Lilith made me do it. The claim is that Lilith, the original succubus, has been wrongly demonized, or at the very least that she's a complicated woman who doesn't deserve all the blame. And it's possible that Jennifer's Body is drawing on some of this thought, as we shall see. So we've talked about the surface, it's a high school movie. We've dug a little bit deeper and uncovered something older, the deal with the devil narrative, and medieval conceptions of Lilith and succubi. But there's something even deeper going on in this film. And to uncover it, we will need to journey even further back in time, to the 1st century AD. Because woven into the fabric of this film are explicit references to the life of Jesus Christ. And that makes sense. The writer of this film is Diablo Cody. She was born in 1978 with the name Brooke Busey. She was raised in an apostolic Christian family and attended Roman Catholic school. After beginning work as a secretary, she started an adult blog and changed her name to Diablo Cody. A provocative choice given her Christian background, since Diablo is Spanish for devil. But then she did something even more provocative. She became a stripper.
Yeah, I eventually one day I just kind of got fed up. I was just sort of frustrated with the straight world, so I just started stripping. It wasn't bad. I mean, you can make your own hours.
In 2005, she wrote her first screenplay, a film called Juno, about a teenage girl with an unplanned pregnancy. The film was made and released in 2007, and it was a hit. And in that film, Cody inserted some nods to her own interest in the horror genre.
The Wizard of Gore?
That is Herschel Gordon Lewis. He's the ultimate master of horror.
Please! Dario Argento is so the ultimate master of horror.
Soon enough, she had the opportunity to write a horror movie of her own, and Jennifer's Body was born. So from Cody's context, we might expect the film to grapple with the Christianity of her childhood and its interaction with feminism. And it does, but in a rather surprising way. Jennifer Check has the same initials as Jesus Christ, JC, and throughout the film she seems to roleplay a number of key scenes from the Passion narrative. Someone else who's picked up on this is P.A. Todzia in her paper Musings on Jennifer Check and Jesus Christ, or the Christian allegory and feminism in Jennifer's Body. She identifies a possible visual similarity between the low shoulder bar scene featuring Jennifer and Needy and the Rubens painting Last Supper, and this takes place just before Jennifer gets sacrificed. The film is full of X's. X comes from the Greek letter chi, which has long been used as an abbreviation for Christos, or Christ. In this film, the X is also associated with the idea of crossing something or someone out.
I promised Tip that I would hang out with him tonight.
Boo, cross out Needy. I'm crossing you out.
This line is paid off in the climax of the film.
Cross out Jennifer.
Needy slashes an X onto Jennifer's body and stabs her in the heart. And through this final cross-shaped confrontation, the demon is defeated. Then Jennifer's mother holds the dead body of her daughter. Here's how the screenplay describes it. Mrs. Check cradles her maimed daughter on the floor like a white trash Pieta. Now, as P.A. Todzia points out, this shot has a strong resemblance to Michelangelo's Pieta, depicting the crucified Christ in the arms of his mother. So these are strong references to the crucifixion, and elsewhere the movie is even less subtle about it.
I mean, I get letters every day. Sometimes the letters are from people who say they're praying for me. They tell me everything will be okay if I just accept Jesus Christ into my heart. I say the words, but nothing ever happens. Nobody comes back. Nobody gets off the cross.
I am having the best day since, Jesus invented the calendar.
Here's Needy's mum.
I dreamed some bad people were trying to nail you to a tree with hammers and big stakes and just like JC. But I didn't let him get you because I'm a hard-ass, tough mama bear.
I can take care of myself.
Yeah, you say that, but one day you're going to be crying out for me and I'm not going to be there.
Indeed, Christ was nailed to a tree, the cross, and trees are everywhere in this movie. Here's Needy's narration as Jennifer gets taken away to suffer at the hands of the band members.
I watched her get into that van and I knew something awful was going to happen. He was skinny and twisted and evil like this petrified tree I saw when I was a kid.
So Needy was disturbed by this particular tree when she was a kid. Her mother is disturbed by a dream about Needy being nailed to a tree. And here, Jennifer is being taken away up a hill to be bound to a tree stump and sacrificed. Low Shoulder's hit song is called Through the Trees. Jennifer kills her first victims, Armet and Jonas, surrounded by trees. So the film really draws our attention to the trees. And so does the Bible. In Genesis, we read of the first man, Adam, going to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and grasping from it in selfishness, bringing curse into the world, including thorns and thistles. He tries to cover his nakedness with leaves from a fig tree. And centuries later, Jesus comes as the second Adam, the answer to the curse introduced by the first Adam. And Jesus curses the fig tree, as if peeling back the inadequate coverings of the first Adam. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus is confronted with the bitter cup he is to drink. And as P.A. Todzier points out, this is referenced in the film by the drink offered to Jennifer just before she gets into the van. Jesus, the second Adam, goes to his tree, the cross, and instead of grasping in selfishness, he pours out his life. He's even crucified between a repentant thief and an unrepentant thief, knowledge of good and evil. And the thorns which came into the world as a curse under the first Adam are raised up and made into a crown for the head of the second Adam, Jesus. So there's a profound significance to Jesus being nailed to the tree. I think Diablo Cody has been very intentional about inserting some of these references into the film. Here's another one. There's a notable flashback to the young Jennifer and Needy playing in a sandbox. As P.A. Todzier says, Jennifer gets a tack in the palm of her hand. This wound is an allusion to stigmata, the nail marks of Christ, and it foreshadows Jennifer's eventual sacrifice. Needy partakes of Jennifer's blood by cleaning the wound with her mouth. By this communion, Needy is associated or twinned with Jennifer because of a bond to Jennifer's soul represented by Jennifer's blood.
Sandbox love never dies.
So that's a fascinating parallel being drawn there, whatever you make of it. The trio formed by Jennifer, Needy, and Needy's boyfriend Chip might even be a reference to the Trinity. Chip's surname is Dove, and the Holy Spirit is represented by a dove, and there seems to be a supernatural connection between these characters, especially Jennifer and Needy.
Jennifer's here.
How do you know?
Needy, quit tampooning yourself and get down here.
That's weird.
So what is the significance of all this biblical symbolism? Well, for much of the film, the situation seems hopeless. This is reflected by the bottomless, chaotic whirlpool on the outskirts of Needy's town, Devil's Kettle.
It goes into this hole, and it doesn't come out. The scientist guys dropped all kinds of things down there, but nothing ever surfaces. Maybe it's another dimension. Or, just really deep.
Jennifer is sacrificed on the hill overlooking this waterfall. The murder weapon is thrown into the mysterious hole. And Needy draws a connection between this entire hellish situation and the idea of Jesus not getting down from the cross.
I say the words, but nothing ever happens. Nobody comes back. Nobody gets off the cross.
You can feel the pain in these words. Needy is grappling with the problem of divine hiddenness. After everything that's gone down, if there is a good God, where is he? Why does he seem silent in the face of suffering? What fascinates me is that Jesus, God the Eternal Son, on the cross he cried, my God, why have you forsaken me?" God the Son himself experienced God-forsakenness. There's something profound going on there, because Jesus didn't get off the cross.
Nobody gets off the cross.
And that was the whole point. He remained on the cross until he exclaimed, "It is finished." And then he died. His body was taken down from the cross and put in a tomb. Diablo Cody knows full well that the story didn't end there. Jesus punched through death and out into resurrection life. What about the film? Is there any hope for someone like Needy after all the torment? Well, Needy breaks out of the mental facility using the supernatural powers she has inherited from Jennifer biting her. and she discovers a stream containing the very items that were thrown into that mysterious hole at the start of the movie, including the weapon used to stab Jennifer. Turns out it's not a bottomless abyss. It has emerged into something beyond. Maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe there is some kind of hope. And Needy uses this very weapon to kill the Low Shoulder band members. So there's a kind of cathartic, poetic justice there. The weapon that brought the diabolical evil into the film in the first place is turned against the very people who wielded it. Does good conquer evil in Jennifer's body? It's hard to say. At the very least, evil is turned against itself to some degree. But even with the bad guys getting their just desserts at the end of the movie, it's not exactly a happy ending. Needy still carries a residue of the demonic power that was unleashed. In a sense, the curse continues, with little sign of ultimate deliverance. So I can't help but see this film as a tragedy with notes of hope. But that in itself isn't necessarily a criticism. So what have we seen? In Jennifer's body, Diablo Cody hides a retelling of the Christ story within a retelling of the Deal with the Devil story within an American high school story. And here's what I'm struggling to understand. Why does she depict Jennifer as a Christ figure? Is it to mock Christianity? Is Diablo Cody simply playing fast and loose with these Christian symbols in order to be provocative? Perhaps. She is a provocateur at times, that's undoubtedly true. She's been critical about the Christianity of her childhood, but in 2013 she said, "I still believe in God and I get mocked by my friends for this." Wherever she's at, I reckon she still finds something compelling about the person of Jesus. And I think she's using this imagery because she knows that it has impacted our culture more than anything else. So if it's not just her being irreverent, what is it? Perhaps the point is that Jennifer is an inverted Christ figure, and therefore the references to Jesus illustrate how she is a distortion of Jesus. Jesus receives the Holy Spirit at his baptism, but Jennifer receives a demonic spirit. Jesus uses his power to bless others, but Jennifer uses her powers to kill others. Jesus offers his own blood, but Jennifer steals blood. After Jesus leaves Earth, he pours out his Holy Spirit on his followers at Pentecost, but Jennifer passes her demonic powers to Needy. So what do we reckon? Is Jennifer an antichrist figure? Well, that's almost certainly not the intention of the filmmakers. This is a feminist horror film. And a feminist horror film wouldn't want us to see Jennifer, the victim of a horrendous misogynistic crime, as the villain of the movie. So perhaps the film doesn't want to paint Christianity in a terrible light, and it definitely doesn't want to paint Jennifer in a terrible light. So what does it want? Well, here's what P.A. Todzier argues at the end of that essay that I've been quoting from a lot in this video. The accumulation of Christian symbolism, allegory, and the feminist intention of the filmmakers leaves room for no other interpretation. Okay, bold, I'm intrigued. Jennifer is the title character of the film. She ultimately sacrifices her body to save the town and her friend Needy from evil, hence the title of the film. And he took bread and gave thanks and brake it, and gave unto them, saying, "This is my body which is given for you." These are words from the Last Supper. The only other logical interpretation, that Needy, who is narrating the story from a mental institution, is psychotic and making up the whole story, does not fit with the feminist intentions of the filmmakers, because this involves degrading the main character, making her a monster. This is not feminist at all. Jennifer could be a flawed teenage girl in a feminist horror movie, but she cannot be deprived of her humanity. Okay, fascinating. So if I understand it correctly, Todzier's assertion is that Jennifer is the true but hidden saviour figure within the story, and that's why she's surrounded by all these references to Christ. Now, I learned so much from this essay, and I might be wrong, but I'm not sure about that conclusion. When the newly possessed Jennifer shows up at Needy's house in the night, it's terrifying. Especially when she just stands in the kitchen and smiles. That scene is legit one of the scariest things I have ever seen. Needy recognises that something profoundly dark and twisted is going on.
And then she barfed up this,
disgusting, prickly stuff that looked like roadkill and like sewing needles mixed together. It was like evil.
So the demonic presence in Jennifer is genuinely evil, and it drives her to commit horrific crimes. How much of that darkness is coming from Jennifer herself? How much of it is coming from the demon inside her? The film leaves it ambiguous. And as for this claim that Jennifer ultimately sacrifices her body to save the town and her friend Needy from evil, is that what happens? I mean, Jennifer is more than happy to continue feasting on boys, and it is Needy who has to stop her. So yes, when Jennifer gets stabbed, that does set the town free from demonic oppression to some degree, but it happens in spite of Jennifer's efforts rather than because of them. So you could say that Needy is more of a Christ figure because she does what has to be done to stop the demonic evil and ends up in captivity for it. I understand why P.A. Todzia is making this argument, because she's absolutely right. In the film, all the Christian symbolism is attached primarily to Jennifer and not to Needy. But it seems impossible, even by the logic of the film, to simply call her a Christ figure.
You were never a good friend. Even when we were little, you used to steal my toys and pour lemonade on my bed.
And now I'm eating your boyfriend. See? At least I'm consistent.
However, the film does challenge us to be very wary of placing all the blame on Jennifer. Because let's not forget, it's a group of men who brought this evil into the world in the first place when they committed that egregious crime against her. What I like about Jennifer's body is that it doesn't seem to arrive at concrete answers. It doesn't feel preachy, unlike some of Diablo Cody's more recent work.
In our next presidential election, I may vote Democrat.
Blasphemy!
Oh no. I just want to experience worldly pleasures for the first time.
Anything specific in mind?
Your basic abominations.
What's going on with you ladies?
It kind of throws up its hands and says, yeah, life is complicated. We're all mixed bags.
I'm a different person now. A person who uses curse words and kicks orderlies and sees things that aren't there. A very bad, very damaged person.
I think I see Jennifer's Body as an ex-evangelical movie. On the one hand, it's provocative and progressive. It rails against the traditional Christianity of Diablo Cody's youth. It rails against the Christian view of sex and marriage. On the other hand, it makes some points that would find a lot of agreement within traditional Christianity and may well have been shaped by Diablo Cody's Christian background. The film acknowledges the existence of evil in the world and evil within ourselves. It acknowledges that there are specific egregious ways in which men have oppressed and used women. It's nuanced enough to say that not all men are bad all the time and not all women are good all the time. And throughout all this, Jennifer's Body can't help but use Christian language and Christian symbolism to tell its story. And that's interesting. Christianity is often seen as the enemy of feminism. It certainly disagrees with some aspects of modern feminism. But here's journalist Louise Perry with a fascinating perspective that isn't often heard.
I have a slightly unusual view of the relationship between Christianity and feminism. In general, feminists, modern feminists, set themselves up in opposition to Christianity, particularly on the issue of abortion, the Handmaid's Tale kind of neo-Puritan outfit being the uniform now of American feminists and so on. I am of the view, though, that actually feminism is an outgrowth of Christianity, and that the fundamental idea in Christianity, which is so different from other religious traditions, that weakness is strength, that the first shall be last, that there is something valuable about being small and vulnerable rather than something despicable about it. I think that feminism completely relies on that idea, which is by no means shared by all cultures and certainly wasn't shared by the ancient Roman culture from which Christianity sprung. And so if you're operating in, say, an ancient Roman culture which doesn't see women as inherently vulnerable, which actually sees female vulnerability as something to be despised, potentially, and which sees prostituted slave women as entirely available for male sexual consumption, that cannot really conceptualize the idea of a slave woman being able to be sexually violated. You know, it's just not kind of within the moral system. It's not understandable. Into that comes the Christian idea of sexual equality, at least at the spiritual level. And the idea, therefore, that actually even a woman who doesn't have male kin available to defend her against sexual violation, which of course a slave doesn't, she is nevertheless worthy of that protection. It kind of socializes is maybe the wrong word, but it shares that duty of protection among the community and among women. I think that's basically what feminism is, and says that actually we should be bestowing on these friendless women the same protection that a woman with high connected male kin has. It's a very difficult system to enforce. To some extent, we try and use police, criminal justice system, whatever, to do that job. It's a hard job to do, but that is basically the modern project, and I think it is born out of Christian morality.
I don't know what you make of that, but it's a fascinating perspective that we don't often hear. Even a progressive film like Jennifer's Body can't help but be drawn, almost in spite of itself, to the figure of Christ crucified. Because surely the most profound image of hope and value and dignity being found in the darkest of places is Christ crucified. And he died not just for men, but for women too. I reckon Diablo Cody gave Jennifer Check the initials JC and surrounded her with all this Christian imagery to identify a sacred value and dignity within even the most complicated and downtrodden of women. Because as she points out in that conversation with Megan Fox, our world is full of violence and hatred, especially towards women. The film has resonated in part because it depicts women getting revenge against abusive men. There's something cathartic about that. But as we've seen, it doesn't result in a happy ending for Jennifer and Needy. And Jesus demonstrated that there is something better than revenge. He encountered women who were messy and shunned and despised, and he called them daughters, offering salvation and hope in the midst of this cruel and broken world. If any of you watching this have suffered from abuse, thank you so much for watching. I can't begin to imagine what you've gone through, and I can understand why a film like Jennifer's Body might name some of that reality. But I do know this: Jesus came for people like you. Hello, Thomas here. You might enjoy a short film I directed called The Telltale Heart. It's based on the Edgar Allan Poe short story of the same name, and we had a lot of fun with it. Loads of practical effects and unhinged performances. And you can watch it by clicking here. I'd love to hear your thoughts. On this channel, I try to look at film from a different perspective, and sometimes I have a go at making films myself. Thank you so much for watching. Do subscribe if you'd like to stay in the loop, and I will be back soon. Goodbye.